Have you ever had the strange feeling that a woman is somehow present in your life, even when she isn't? I don't mean the obvious things. I don't mean texting you every hour. I don't mean posting quotes about love on social media. I'm talking about something quieter than that. Something most men completely miss. Because when a woman is thinking about you constantly, she often becomes more careful, not less. And if you've ever spent nights wondering whether you're crossing her mind the way she's crossing yours, then stay with me for a few minutes. And if these conversations help you understand people, and maybe understand yourself a little better, consider subscribing. Not because I need another number on a screen, but because some truths take time to uncover, and I would love to continue that journey with you. Now, one of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming that constant thoughts create obvious actions. They imagine that if a woman cannot stop thinking about someone, she'll become dramatic, emotional, predictable. But psychology rarely works that way. In fact, the more emotionally significant someone becomes, the more complicated behavior often gets. I've seen this countless times. A woman meets a man. Maybe nothing extraordinary happens at first. Maybe it's just a conversation. Maybe it's a shared moment. Maybe it's the way he listened when everyone else was waiting for their turn to speak. And then something unexpected happens. She goes home. She continues with her life. She makes dinner, answers messages, goes to work, smiles at people. But somewhere in the background, his presence remains. Not loudly, quietly, like a song she didn't mean to memorize. And what fascinates me is what happens next. Most men think attraction grows through action. Women often experience it through attention. The more her mind returns to you without effort, the more emotional weight you begin to carry inside her inner world. She'll be doing something completely unrelated and suddenly remember a sentence you said 3 weeks ago. Not because the sentence was brilliant, because it came from you. That distinction matters. When someone becomes psychologically important, the brain starts attaching meaning to details that would otherwise disappear. A joke, a look, a small kindness, a passing comment. Things other people forget become difficult for her to forget. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. She may never tell you. Because admitting someone occupies your thoughts feels vulnerable, especially for women who appear confident on the outside. The woman everyone thinks is emotionally composed often has the strongest instinct to hide what she feels. So instead of confessing it, she studies it. She observes. She watches her own reactions. She asks herself questions she cannot answer. Why am I thinking about him again? Why did that conversation stay with me? Why do I care what he thinks? And every unanswered question pulls her attention back toward you. Not because she's trying to think about you, because her mind keeps returning there on its own. That's the first sign. When a woman is thinking about you constantly, she starts mentally revisiting moments that seemed ordinary when they happened. And the strange thing is, those moments often become more meaningful in her memory than they ever appeared in real life. That's where the story usually begins. What happens after that is something most men completely misunderstand. Because they assume that if a woman is thinking about them constantly, she becomes more certain. But often she becomes more conflicted. The human mind has a strange relationship with emotional attachment. When someone starts mattering, certainty and uncertainty begin living side by side. Part of her feels drawn toward you, another part becomes cautious, and that internal tension creates behaviors that can seem confusing from the outside. For example, have you ever noticed a woman suddenly becoming more aware of your presence than before? Not necessarily reaching out more, not necessarily flirting more, just noticing you. The smallest details, the things nobody else pays attention to, the way your mood changes, the difference between your genuine smile and your polite one, the moments when your energy feels different. When a woman thinks about you often, her brain naturally starts collecting information. Not because she's conducting an investigation, because emotionally invested people become attentive people. Think about your own experience. When someone means nothing to you, details disappear. When someone matters, details stay. You remember things without trying. The same thing happens to her. And here's where it becomes deeply personal. Sometimes she notices things about you that you haven't even noticed about yourself. The way your confidence disappears around certain people. the way your voice changes when you're passionate about something, the way you pretend you're fine when you're actually carrying something heavy. Most men believe attraction is about being impressive, but emotional attachment is often about becoming familiar, becoming psychologically recognizable. She begins to feel as though she's reading a book she cannot put down, not because every page is exciting, because she wants to know what happens next. And that curiosity creates another sign. She starts finding reasons to keep small connections alive. Notice I said small, not dramatic, small. A reaction to a story, a message that didn't really need to be sent, a question she could have answered herself. Tiny bridges, tiny openings, tiny invitations for interaction. And here's the part nobody talks about. Many women don't consciously realize they're doing this. If you ask them directly, they might genuinely struggle to explain why they reached out. Because the behavior often starts below conscious awareness. The emotional brain acts first. Logic arrives later to explain it. I've watched this happen so many times. A woman says she's just checking in, just curious, just being friendly, and maybe she believes that. But beneath those explanations is a deeper truth. Her mind keeps returning to the same person, and human beings naturally move toward what occupies their thoughts. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just gradually, like water finding its way downhill. But there is another layer to this that makes everything even more complicated. Because when a woman thinks about you constantly, she doesn't only focus on who you are, she begins imagining who you might become in her life. And that's where emotions start gaining real power. Because now she isn't only remembering interactions, she's creating possibilities. And possibilities can become far more emotionally intense than reality itself. That's when the connection starts moving from her thoughts into her imagination. And once someone reaches that space, the experience becomes much harder to ignore. This is the point where things become dangerous. Not dangerous in a dramatic way, dangerous in the quiet, psychological way that changes how someone feels without them fully realizing it. Because once a woman starts imagining possibilities, she's no longer thinking only about who you are. She's thinking about what life feels like when you're in it. And those are two very different things. Most men focus entirely on their actions, what they said, what they did, whether they texted enough, whether they made the right move. Meanwhile, something entirely different may be happening inside her mind. She begins creating emotional simulations, little moments that never actually happened, conversations she imagines having with you, experiences she imagines sharing with you, versions of the future that exist nowhere except inside her thoughts. Now, before you misunderstand me, this doesn't mean she's planning your wedding after 2 conversations. Real psychology is much more subtle than that. What often happens is simpler. You're standing in line at a coffee shop in her imagination, you're sitting across from her at dinner, you're hearing about her day, you're making her laugh after a difficult week. Small scenes, ordinary scenes. But ordinary scenes carry enormous emotional weight because they answer one question her mind keeps asking. What would it feel like if he became part of my life? And every time she imagines that question, your emotional significance grows. Not because you're physically present, because you're mentally present. That's why some women suddenly become strangely sensitive to your absence. And this is where many men get confused. They disappear for a few days, and suddenly the energy changes. The woman seems quieter, more distant, or sometimes unexpectedly warm when they return. The man assumes something happened. Sometimes nothing happened. The only difference is that the rhythm she had become accustomed to was interrupted. When someone occupies your thoughts regularly, their absence creates a noticeable space, a gap, a silence. You feel it before you understand it. I once spoke with a woman who described it perfectly. She said, "I knew I was in trouble when I started noticing the days he wasn't there." Not because she was obsessed, not because she was dependent, because his presence had become part of her emotional landscape. Like a familiar path she walked every day. And when that path disappeared, she felt the difference. That's what constant thinking does. It quietly integrates someone into your internal world. The strange thing is that this often happens long before love, long before commitment, long before any label exists. Psychological attachment rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, one remembered conversation, one unexpected smile, one thought before sleep,
One thought after waking up.
then another, until one day she catches herself doing something revealing. She compares other people to you. Not intentionally, it just happens. A conversation reminds her of something you said. A stranger's laugh reminds her of yours. Someone else gives her attention, but it doesn't feel the same. And that's when the emotional puzzle becomes impossible to ignore. Because comparison is often the moment someone realizes that a person has taken up more space in their mind than they ever intended. And once that realization arrives, everything starts feeling a little more real. The moment it starts feeling real is usually the moment she becomes more careful. Not less careful, more. And this is where many men completely misread what's happening, because they expect growing feelings to create straightforward behavior. But human beings are rarely straightforward when something genuinely matters. Think about your own life. The things you care about most are often the things that make you hesitate. The opportunities you desperately want are the ones that make you nervous. The people who matter deeply are the people whose opinions can affect you. Women experience that same emotional contradiction. When a woman cannot stop thinking about you, there is often a period where she begins protecting herself from what she feels. Not because she wants to lose you, because she suddenly realizes she could be hurt by you. And that realization changes everything. Now your texts mean more. Your attention means more. Your silence means more. Even your smallest actions can carry emotional weight she never intended to give them. This is why a woman who thinks about you constantly may occasionally seem difficult to understand. One day she appears open. The next day she seems reserved. One moment she seems emotionally present. The next she pulls back. Many men assume this means her interest is disappearing. Sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes she's trying to manage feelings that are growing stronger than she expected. Because here's something most people never say out loud. Attachment creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates fear. Not fear of you, fear of disappointment, fear of misunderstanding, fear of caring more than the other person cares. Those fears exist even in emotionally healthy people, especially in emotionally healthy people, because they've lived enough life to know that feelings alone don't guarantee outcomes. So she becomes observant. She starts paying attention to consistency, not charm, not words, consistency. Does your behavior match what you say? Do you show up the same way repeatedly? Can she trust the version of you she's getting to know? These questions become important because when someone occupies her thoughts constantly, her emotional investment starts increasing. And nobody wants to invest emotionally in uncertainty forever. That's why one of the strongest signs a woman is thinking about you often is something surprisingly simple. She remembers things, details, tiny details, the kind of details most people forget within hours. You mention a stressful meeting. Weeks later, she asks how it went. You mention a goal. Months later, she remembers it. You casually share a story about your childhood. Later, she references it without hesitation. To many men, these moments seem small, but psychologically, they're significant. Memory follows meaning. We naturally remember what feels important, and when someone repeatedly remembers the details of your life, it often means you have become emotionally relevant inside theirs. Not because she's trying to impress you, not because she's performing interest, because her attention keeps returning to you, again and again. And the more that happens, the more she begins looking for something deeper than excitement. She begins looking for emotional safety, a place where her thoughts no longer have to stay hidden, a place where curiosity can become connection. Because eventually there comes a point when thinking about someone is no longer enough. Sooner or later, the heart wants answers that imagination cannot provide. And that's usually when the next shift begins. The next shift is subtle, so subtle that if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it completely. Because this is the stage where her attention starts moving toward emotional closeness. Not fantasy, not curiosity, closeness. And there is a difference. Curiosity asks, who is he? Closeness asks, can I be myself with him? That question changes everything. When a woman has been thinking about you constantly for a long time, eventually the mystery becomes less important than the feeling she experiences around you. This is where emotional attachment becomes less about attraction and more about comfort. And comfort is a strange thing. Most people underestimate its power. Movies sell excitement, social media sells intensity, but real emotional bonds are often built on something much quieter: relief. The relief of not pretending, the relief of being understood, the relief of feeling seen without having to explain every piece of yourself.
I've watched women describe this experience in remarkably similar ways. Not with dramatic declarations, with simple observations.
I feel calmer around him. I don't have to perform. I can actually relax. At first glance, those statements sound ordinary. They're not. Psychologically, they're profound. Because when someone consistently occupies your thoughts, your mind eventually starts asking a deeper question than attraction. It asks whether this person feels emotionally safe. And when the answer begins to feel like yes, something changes. Her guard doesn't disappear overnight, but it softens. She becomes more genuine, more spontaneous, less focused on creating an impression, more interested in creating a connection. You may notice longer conversations, not because she planned them, because she doesn't want them to end. You may notice her sharing parts of herself she doesn't normally reveal, small insecurities, old memories, dreams she rarely talks about, things that don't appear in casual conversations. And here's what makes these moments meaningful. People don't reveal their inner world to everyone. They reveal it to people who feel emotionally significant, to people who occupy space in their minds long after the conversation ends. That's why vulnerability is often a stronger sign than flirtation. Flirting can happen for many reasons. Vulnerability is different. Vulnerability usually means trust is beginning to grow. And trust changes the nature of the connection. Now she isn't only wondering who you are, she's wondering whether you truly see her, whether you understand the parts she keeps hidden from most people, whether the version of herself she reveals is actually accepted. Those questions matter because every meaningful relationship eventually arrives at the same crossroads. The desire to be known, not admired, known. And when a woman has been thinking about you constantly, there is often a moment where she realizes something unexpected. The person she's been analyzing, remembering, imagining, and wondering about has started becoming emotionally important. Not in theory, not in imagination, in reality. And once that realization settles into her heart, it becomes very difficult to go back to feeling nothing. Because emotional significance has a way of changing how we see everything that comes after. And this is where I want to leave you with something most men never hear. A woman who thinks about you constantly is not necessarily thinking about your status, your looks, your achievements, or the image you try to project. Eventually, all of those things fade into the background. What stays is the emotional experience she associates with you, the feeling. Because human memory is funny that way. Years later, people often forget exact conversations. They forget specific details, but they remember how someone made them feel when life was difficult. They remember who brought them peace, who brought them confusion, who brought them warmth, who brought them distance. And when a woman finds herself thinking about you again and again, day after day, what she's often returning to isn't just your face. She's returning to a feeling her mind hasn't been able to replace. That's why some connections linger far longer than logic says they should.
Logic says,
move on. Emotion says, something here still matters. Logic says, stop thinking about him. Emotion quietly replies, I can't. Not because she's weak, not because she's irrational, because human beings are not machines. We are shaped by experiences, and certain people leave fingerprints on our emotional lives. The truth is, the strongest connections are rarely the loudest ones. They're usually the quiet ones, the ones built through consistency, shared understanding, mutual respect, the feeling of being able to exhale around someone. Those connections often grow slowly enough that neither person notices what's happening at first. Then one day they do. One day she catches herself smiling after reading a message from you. One day she realizes she remembers things about you that nobody asked her to remember. One day she notices that your happiness genuinely affects her mood. And one day, perhaps the most revealing moment of all, she stops asking herself why she's thinking about you. because she already knows the answer. At that point, the question is no longer, why does he keep crossing my mind? The question becomes, what am I going to do about it? Now, that doesn't mean every thought becomes a relationship. It doesn't mean every connection becomes love. Real life is more complex than that. People have different circumstances, different timing, different paths. But meaningful feelings still matter. And the people who leave lasting impressions on us matter. So if you're sitting alone tonight wondering whether a woman ever thinks about you when you're not around, remember this. The most important signs are not always the loud ones. They're often hidden in attention, in memory, in curiosity, in the little details she remembers when everyone else forgets. Because when a woman is truly thinking about you constantly, her actions often reveal it long before her words ever do. And sometimes, the quietest signals are the ones that tell the deepest truth.